Night with me, Charlie Turnbull, and Dennis Howe. Good afternoon, Dennis. Let's get that beautiful picture of Normandy out the way so that we can see your wonderful face. Welcome to Tuesday night. It's Cheese Night. Welcome to the Academy of Cheese.
Thank you.
Lovely to meet you. So you've joined us so that we can learn about Normandy. The wonderful Noémie, who is our normal speaker on the Tour des Fromages de France, has ceded her seat to someone who she says has much superior knowledge to her. So we hope you have going to be a wonderful guide tonight.
I hope so. I hope so.
Let us start with the easy questions. What are the famous cheeses of Normandy? Come on, it's the that one should be a back of the net.
I would say number one is the Camembert of Normandy.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, Livarot. Number three, Pont l'Évêque. And one of my favorite cheese, it's the heart of Neuchâtel.
The Queue de Neuchâtel, yes.
Yeah, I will tell you a story about that later on.
Okay. Well, let's start with where is Normandy? You know, I mean, let's be honest, it's our closest neighbor, just about.
Yeah. We are just on the other side of the channel.
Mm-hmm. So the coast of Normandy faces up into sort of Sussex and southern Hampshire and that kind of area. It is literally just over the way between, is it Nord-Pas-de-Calais and Brittany further round? Is that right?
Pas-de-Calais is just north of France, and we are more on the west side of France.
Okay.
It's Brittany and Normandy. And I'm living in Manche, French department, and the shape of this department is called Cotentin, Presqu'île of Cotentin, and it's facing England.
It's facing. So you're sort of looking at me. So if I wave out my window.
Yeah, if I go up on the table, maybe I can see you. Yeah.
I'm just next to Brighton, so I think you really are just.
Oh yeah. Brighton is not that far. Yeah.
Not that far. It's that kind of thing. It's another country, but it's what, 30 miles? No problem.
Yeah.
Right. But so tell us about Normandy, because as we were chatting before this, in many ways it's similar to the south of England.
Yeah, it's quite similar to the south of England, but we are very lucky here in Cotentin. As you can see on the pictures, we have several different sceneries in Cotentin. We have we are surrounded by the sea, by the channel, and so we have harbors, we have beaches, and in the middle we have all the fields to feed the cow. And we have also a very specific scenery called the swamps. And sometimes when it rains a lot, it can form an island, almost an island. It's very strange. But you can drive maybe 50 kilometers and you can see very different sceneries.
But it's lush, isn't it? We're talking about really good grassland, a lot of mixed pasture, not so flat, if I'm right about that.
No, it's not so flat. Yeah, you are right.
And as you were quick to point out, Mont Saint-Michel is in
Normandy.
It is
not in Brittany.
Because we have St. Michael's Mount, which is our sort of sister, which is over in Cornwall. I hope so. Not Devon, which looks much the same.
If we talk, you were talking about the grass. If we talk about the weather, we have around 160 days of rain per year. So it makes the grass very green and very fat, I would say. And we have a lot of maybe meadows.
Yeah.
Surrounded by trees, and it's a very specific area here.
It just begs for dairy, doesn't it? That's what it's saying.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's made to raise cows to have milk and to make cheese. Yeah.
But the interesting thing about it is that it is completely famous for smaller cow's milk cheeses. So it likes cows, which we see across as you head north into Europe, down in the south Mediterranean. That's sort of sheep and goats.
Yeah.
The more north you might get more cow's milk. By the time you get to Normandy, which is sort of upper middle France, it's all cows, and your pastures there just reach for them basically.
Yeah. Goat, and it's more south of France. Yeah, you're right.
And the Normandy cattle is a particular breed. Describe them for us.
Yeah, I would say it's a very nice cow, because one of the key points, if we can see a picture of a cow, they have a stain around their eyes. They can have different colors, different shape of stains on their body, but around their eyes, they have always stain.
Right, there we're beginning to get into our cows. Here we go. So we would say in the UK that they have spectacles.
Spectacles, okay.
Like glasses.
Yeah, glasses, yeah.
Yeah.
And they are very nice to I would say
to milk, to work with as dairy animals.
Yes. They are known for their fertility, longevity, ease of calving, and docility. And
okay,
it's really a nice cow.
Very nice. And I'm right in saying that they are slightly smaller than your average cow.
Yeah, a little bit smaller. They don't give as much milk as the Holstein, of course, but the milk is more rich in terms of protein level and fat level, and of course the cream of Normandy is very good due to that.
Yes, it is. All your dairy products coming out of Normandy are they're world class. So we can see them. So those spectacles are really obvious. Oh, my thing has moved on. Come on, my spectacles are really obvious there. So that is the defining feature, but they are broadly brown and white to a greater or lesser extent.
Yeah.
We can see one down there that is mostly white, and also one is mostly brown.
Yeah, so some of them are more brown. You can see on the background that there is one which is quite white, but they always have glasses on their eyes.
And you do get more black versions rather than brown, don't you?
Yeah. That's the bad part of that, and that makes the difference between the Camembert of Normandy and Camembert made in Normandy.
Okay.
For the Camembert of Normandy, it's a PDO. It's a protected designation of origin.
Yeah.
And it was created in 1983, if I remember.
Okay.
And of course,
dare I say it, not that long ago.
Yeah. And it gives strict specifications. For example, the milk must come only from Normandy, and it must be raw to make Camembert of Normandy. So not unheated and not pasteurized. And the herd of each milk producer must contain at least 50% of Norman breed cows.
Okay.
That's one of the specification. And the cows, they must be fed. They must feed at least for 6 months in the pastures.
Okay.
That's the other specification. And the rest of the time, at least 80% of the food should come from the farm where they are raised.
Okay, so they need to be fed from the farm. You can't be importing.
Yeah. And usually, the producer they have all the food they want. Yeah.
Okay. Now I visited Normandy. I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. I can't remember. And there was only one producer still making in Camembert itself, the town of Camembert. But there is 6 or 7 AOP producers now?
Yeah. It's around that. Yeah, I visited one. It's in a small town called Lessé, and it's the name of the producer is Réau, and of course they are still making Camembert of Normandy made with raw milk, and they use a ladle, and it's very nice to see. They have a cheese factory tour where you can see the people working. It's very interesting.
It is. It's and there is still quite a wide variety of size of producers, isn't there? Because there was at one point the Camembert Wars when the larger producers wanted to stop the requirement for manual ladling. Is that right?
Yeah. But it's one specification which is very important, because when you make Camembert of Normandy, you have it takes maybe 3.5 hours to put the curd into the forms, and you take a ladle, and you pour gently a first layer of curd into the form, and 50 minutes later you put the second one, and 50 minutes later the third one, and the fourth one, and the fifth one. And you don't want to break the curd in small pieces, in small chunks, otherwise you change the draining process. And one specification about Camembert of Normandy, it's not to break in small chunks the curd. So the draining process is very slow, and it's the main reason why you have these specific flavors at the end, because of very slow draining.
Very slow draining, and that is sort of so crucial to the character of the cheese that to move away from that, what's the point? Don't call it Camembert if you do that kind of thing.
Yeah, we at the plant where I'm working now, we are making I would say industrial Camembert and Coulommiers, and the making process for Camembert of Normandy, I said 3 hours and 30 minutes. For us, it's maybe 1 hour and 10 minutes.
Okay, so you can really shorten the process by moving away from the strict rules of the Camembert.
Yes. Yeah.
So let's eat some. I mean, the Camembert Normandy, one of the rules is its size. I mean, this is Le Rustique, which is not an AOC, an AOP. I have to say, I like this cheese. I find it very very flexible. It's quite robust. You get decent flavor, even if you treat it quite badly. If you sort of, I mean, so we've got 250 odd grams. What's the sort of I'm assuming it's a half pound, basically, isn't it?
Yeah. And so it's even if it's an industrial Camembert type of cheese, it's quite close to a Camembert of Normandy, because in our process we select good microorganism to try to match the flavor of a real Camembert of Normandy made with raw milk.
Yeah. And the Camembert de Normandy, does it have to raw? It does have to be raw milk, and it can't even be thermized. It has to be no heating at all, isn't it?
Yeah, you just warm it up a little bit when you add the rennet, but that's it. It's not pasteurized, it's no heat treatment.
So let's get the mold out the way, because this is really interesting to me. So in the UK we talk about Penicillium candidum, whereas you guys talk about Penicillium camemberti. What's the difference? What's the difference? It's a real nerd's question, this.
Yeah, it's a tricky question, because there is maybe a very slim differences between Camemberti and Candidum. Maybe a little bit of difference in terms of color, in terms of thickness, but we use Penicillium to generate the rind and to get the enzyme which are going to break down the protein and the butter fat.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say there is more differences between penicillium and geotrichum. And on the Camembert Le Rustique, you can see a combination of both Penicillium candidum and geotrichum.
Come on, camera, you can focus on here. You can do this for me. So you can see those. Oh, there we go. So you can see those. I always makes me think of sort of a topography when I look at geotrichum. It looks like it's the lands and hills of a land. Not that kind of. Funny enough, on the bottom side, it's much more pure candidum or pure camemberti there.
It's quite flat. Yeah,
quite flat. So that's quite actually interesting to see that the combination of the molds is different on the same cheese there. And if we look at this Cœur de Neufchâtel, we're getting a much more dominant geotrichum there.
Yes, of course, you are right. But the geotrichum is a very interesting mold because it can be due to the temperature and the humidity. It can be very close to a yeast, or it can be very close to a penicillium, to a much more white and blooming type of mold.
I think people now think of it as a yeast, don't they? I think there was some argument, and now people have sort of confirmed it's a yeast, or is it still sort of got a foot in both camps?
I would say yeast are very important. Of course, to have the white rind, you have to use penicillium or geotrichum. But to have a good growth for the penicillium, you must have yeast on the surface of the cheese, and they have two main roles. The first one, it's the yeast are going to start the deacidification of the rind.
Raise the pH.
To raise up the pH. You're right. And after it's they are full of enzymes, and that's part of the rich flavor of the cheese. And of course, when you have the deacidification of the rind, the penicillium can grow faster. So it's very important to have this type of yeast microorganism, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that we notice in British equivalents of Camembert is that we tend to have more sort of the monoculture of just the Camemberti rinds, which some people ascribe to having a slightly more bitter flavor in the cheese. Is that right?
Yeah. You know, the ripening process is very important. My teacher at the dairy school was saying, when you pour the curd into the forms, 80% of the cheese is made. I would say that the 20 last percent are very, very important, and that's the ripening process. And after, the way you keep the cheese. The ripening process is very important because I would say the penicillium doesn't like to grow like in a rice field. The rice grows with the field full of water. If the penicillium grow in the same way, it will become yellow very fast.
Okay. So too much moisture is going to lead to bad rind.
Yes, of course. And after that, you can have this bitterness and that off flavor, which is not very good. And the part of the role of the yeast is to raise up the pH and also to dry the surface of the cheese, to remove the excess of water, so the penicillium can grow in a dry field, I would say. And after it stay white. But also at the end of the ripening, before you wrap the cheese, you have to dry the surface of the cheese, because if it's you have a high humidity in the ripening room, and if you don't remove this high humidity underneath the paper, the white mold will become yellow very fast.
All right.
After you have bitterness and so on.
Dennis, that's great nerdy stuff. Let's switch to the other track and look at the romance. Tell me about Marie Hallel. Tell me about the history of Camembert, because and it is said to be France's most portable cheese because of the boxes that were created and the journey that it's taken to become so popular.
So the history of Camembert. When you talk about the history, you have to talk about Marie Harel, of course. She was making cheese, but at a certain time in France, we had a lot of trouble, and some people they had to move away from Paris, and there was a priest, a refractory priest. We call it like that. He was hiding with Marie and Jacques Harel in their mansion in Camembert, in the village of Camembert. And the priest, he taught to Marie how to make cheese using a brie type of process.
Mm-hmm.
Before, the Marie Harel, she was making Camembert with no rind.
Okay.
And knowing this brie cheese technique, that allowed Marie to create a rind and to keep the cheese more longer, I would say.
Exactly. Yeah.
And because before it was a white cheese, and after it can have a rind. And the history of Camembert, it continues in the 19th century.
So let's just put a date on Marie Harel. We're talking about the 1780s, 1790s, something like that?
I would say maybe a little bit before that. Maybe, okay. No, yes, 1790, I would say, around that.
I think so.
Yeah, 1790. And the rise of the Camembert, it came with there was at one time there was an emperor in France, Emperor Napoleon III, and he was living in Paris. And at one time he wanted to see horse races in a very famous place in Normandy called Le Haras du Pin.
Uh-huh.
And during that stay, he was able to eat Camembert.
Right.
And he said, "Well, that's a very good cheese. I want to have that every time." And Mr. Victor Penel, he was living in Surdon, and he got in trouble because he didn't have enough cheese to send to Paris. And of course, at that time, the cheese was kept on a layer of straws, and it was not very easy to transport. And at the same time, there was another person. What was his name? Mr. I don't remember, but this person, he was able to. He was thinking maybe to transport the cheese in an easier way. Maybe I will create a wooden box.
Mm-hmm.
And so no more bed of straw.
This is a problem that so many cheeses across France have had from those Loire goats cheeses. Transport has really limited their way of getting around because they're so fragile. But you needed both. You needed the Camemberti, the Vernicillium Camemberti, because if you just use the Geotrichum, then you're still gonna struggle to transport. But the combination of these boxes just changed everything, didn't it?
Yeah, and of course on the box you can put a label.
Yeah,
which is quite new.
But this is where my question has come from which we've got Alison and Claire coming back. It's a tyrosemiophilie. Tyrosemiophilie, which is the English word. I think it's actually Greek, but
yes.
Collection
of labels.
Most commonly Camembert labels, but obviously we can see this one as a look. So, and this was enabled by whose name, the gentleman I've already forgotten, who created these boxes that just changed everything for Normandy, made your cheeses travel so much further.
Yeah, and of course, when they created the train line between Paris, Lisieux, and Caen. That was a good step to send the cheese to Paris, and it was much easier. The wooden box, the train, it was faster. It's maybe at that time it was maybe 6 hours away from Paris, which was nothing. And they can develop they were able to develop the cheese and by sending it to Paris.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, while we're on let's stay in romance land, because there's two questions that I want to ask you. One is, let's start with the Coeur de Neuchâtel, completely different cheese. Only similar in the sense of it sort of looks roughly the same. But we're talking about a cheese that is a lactic rather than a rennet-based cheese, and we've got a yeast or a geotrichum rind. But what's obviously so fascinating about it is its shape, the shape of a heart. Dennis, put us out of our misery. Where does the heart come from?
So that was during the 100 Years' War. You know, the English people, they came to France, and
no idea what you're talking about. Nothing to do with me.
And there is a legend which is saying that during that war, that 100 Years' War, the young girls, they were offering to the English soldiers a Neuchâtel, and they were making those cheese in a shape of heart to show their love to the English soldiers.
Oh, the English soldiers! I thought it was the French knights.
No. The French girls, they were falling in love with the English soldiers, and they were offering
their heart,
a heart cheese to the English soldiers.
Oh, that's so interesting. Right. Well, obviously, I don't know. Those poor French lads were losing out to those beefy Englishmen who are coming over there all manly, being slightly too violent, and stuff. So the other story that we are told here, on our bedtime stories, is that it's a monastery-based thing, and actually, it's the shape of angels' wings. That's not true, is it?
No, I never heard about that. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay, well, we're going to stick with, you heard it here first. We have definitive. Dennis says it's the English knights inspiring the dairy maids to give their hearts away in cheese.
Yeah.
Oh, very lovely. Now, that is a very popular cheese. We sell it a lot in this country, particularly around Valentine's Day and Mother's Day and all that kind of thing, because the heart.
Yeah.
It's got a slightly more stinky cousin, which is the Libero. Now, I have a very funny camera here that makes this sort of disappear, but here we go, the Libero, which this is not matured in the same way. Again, we're now looking at a washed rind cheese, but obviously we're seeing some sort of probably most like a camembert underneath, but we're washing this cheese.
Yeah, it's a washed rind. But the nickname of the Libero is Le Colonel. And he has given himself its own stripes, 5 red stripes.
5 is it?
Yeah, there's 5. Alors, maybe here we have the small one. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah.
I thought it was 3, but you're absolutely right. It's 5. You see, you
5
every single day, can't you? So it's 5, and 5 is in the French military is the stripes
colonel
of a colonel.
Yeah. And because this cheese is low in fat, it's the stripes are put on the side of the cheese to prevent sagging.
Okay.
And what we say, it's a colonel must know how to behave, so no sagging.
Stand upright. Yes. Yeah, absolutely right. And it's sedge grass. Am I right about that? It's a long while since I've looked at this, but I think it's sedge. I think, isn't it?
Sorry, I didn't understand.
The type of grass that's used for the.
It's a reed.
It's a reed. Okay. We've got one last cheese on our board tonight, which is the Saint André.
Saint André.
Yeah. Now this is a relatively modern cheese, isn't it?
Yes.
It falls into that triple cream class.
It's a triple cream lactic cheese.
And
it's quite similar to the Bria Savarin, but made in a modern way, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
The penicillium is very thick, and it's a very nice mold cover on the cheese.
Mm-hmm.
And at the beginning of the ripening, like mine here, the all the cheese body is is like a chalk,
Mm-hmm.
and the ripening process starts from underneath the rind and goes to the middle of the cheese body. But
Yeah,
right now it's maybe 10% ripening on
yeah.
mine.
I received my cheeses a week ago, I think. So I've been too cautious of these. I've kept them too cold. But you can see it beginning to ripen just under there, and it gives a texture. I always describe it, which I don't know if it's a French thing, but we describe it as a clotted cream texture, which is. Do you know clotted cream?
No, no, I don't
I'm
know
not
this one.
surprised. There's just a couple of counties in the far bottom left-hand corner of the UK called Devon and Cornwall that have this thing about making dairy cream as thick as it's possible to get by boiling it.
Okay.
It gives
Yeah.
this same texture, which is sort of very smooth and spreadable and makes sort of top peaks and that. This cheese gives a very similar impact once you've had it break down. It's absolutely delicious.
And
I always say that this cheese does. It makes a real benefit out of sourness because you think, oh, it's quite a sour cheese, but it's so luxurious. It's got that extra fat gives it a real sense of luxury.
and because in Normandy we have a very high quality fat, the flavor is just very nice. It's
Yeah.
You have a acid lactic flavor, but you have all the flavors coming from the fat, and it's very creamy and very round in your mouth. It's very nice, very nice cheese.
It's a very nice cheese. We do study at the Academy of Cheese Level 1 the de l'Easter Bourgogne or the Brie Savarin, and it's funny because most people are unfamiliar with these triple cream mold ripened cheeses, and they can be very simple. They're not often very complex in their flavor, but the textural and the pleasure you get from them is disproportionately high. They're very, very popular once people discover them and really enjoy these. So I highly recommend them.
I would say the texture it's very similar to chocolate. You put a piece of Saint-André in your mouth, and it melts by itself like chocolate, just with the heat of your mouth, and it melts by itself. It's a very nice texture.
It is. I do like it. So I've been asked for the names of the cheeses. So we're going to put those into the Livero. I've misspelled that. So I'll ask you one last question because we've had a lovely half an hour talking about Normandy and its cheeses. Why are all your cheeses roughly the same size?
It's they are not all the same size, but if you compare, I would say Savoie and Haute-Savoie and Normandy, the traveling process is much easier in Normandy because the milk producers, the people who are making the cheese, and the places where you are selling the cheese, it's very close, so you don't have to make big cheese.
Okay.
And it's much easier to transport the cheese. So they were making small cheese, and it's also due to regulations, because there is regulation under the to make the cheese. Like you have different size for Brie, you have a size for Camembert, a size for Coulommiers, and we have to go with those specifications, with those regulations.
One of the things that we have in the UK is very much what you're talking about. There's a view that the British cheeses, the territorials, and that they're of their size because they're very tradable. They're very transportable and tradable and robust over distance, but also because the size of the cheese is proportionate to the hardness of the winters. That's the theory goes that if you have very hard winters, you need cheeses that get through a long period of time.
Yes.
Whereas if you've got relatively benign winters, or at least only not too bad, then smaller cheeses can be made. Is there any truth in that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we don't have winter in Normandy. maybe we have
snow. You've shown us pictures of snow.
2 or 3 days below zero, but that's it. Maybe we have, if we are lucky, we have 1 day with snow, and that's it. So we can make Camembert and Pont-l'Évêque and Livarot all year long, and the flavor is different if you compare a cheese made in winter and a cheese made in summer or in spring, like the other cheese in France. Like if I want to eat Comté cheese, I always ask for cheese made in spring and summer, not in winter. That's for sure. One of my favorite cheese is the Mont d'Or, and I don't eat Mont d'Or made in winter because flavor is not good.
It's not good. I mean, we do. It remains an exceptionally. It's one of the most seasonal cheeses, the Mont d'Or. There's one last cheese which I have a soft spot for. I guess I've just had good experiences. The pavé d'Auge. Pavé d'Auge,
yeah.
Sometimes just called pavé, I think. Is that sort of like the equivalent of a country wine, or it's just like everybody makes their own and it falls outside the PDO and they have their own versions of it? Is that why it's not so recognized?
No, maybe it's made, but in a very small quantity. It's it is considered to be the ancestor of the Pont-l'Évêque.
Okay.
But now it's maybe I think some people are trying to make this cheese again, but from my side, I never had a pavé d'Auge. I never tested that cheese. Maybe I should now.
Okay. Well, that's a lovely note. We've hopefully given you something back as you've inspired us to taste the cheese and enjoy. And we're all desperate to go on holiday, everybody all over the world. So let's go on holiday to Normandy. Let's meet our spectacled cows. Let's go and see the beaches, Mont Saint-Michel. Let's go into the heartlands and those hills and dales that's so beautiful with their good pasture. And visit the cheesemakers, because all the cheesemakers that I visited when I was there, they are open to people to come and visit and see the cheese making process. So the likes of Grand Auge, they have a lovely walkway that's on the first floor that allows you to look down and see the cheese making process. So it's fascinating. So thank you so much, Dennis, for coming on the Academy of Cheese Does Conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your stories and your technical skills. And it's been a complete pleasure.
Yeah, it was my pleasure too. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So good night, everybody else. And
bye-bye.
And goodbye from the Academy of Cheese.
And maybe we can meet one day. Yeah.
I hope so. Yes. Bye now.
Bye-bye.